Welcome to the Osiri University Global Meeting. This weekly meeting that we are having is really an effort to unite Africans all over the world. We have African Americans, we have Africans on the continent, Africans in Brazil, Africans all over the world, in Europe, of course, so that we can begin to learn from each other. Oftentimes we talk about this idea of Africanism, and there's nothing done about it. And I believe that we have so much history and so much culture and innovation that we can learn from each other, and we can then produce so that the world can benefit. Let's not forget, we are not just doing this for ourselves, we are doing it to uplift ourselves, yes, but also to help the greater world. So welcome everyone. Today, I thought we'll focus our discussion on what it means to be a leader. What is African leadership approach? I know we have some examples. There are many examples currently in Africa, but there are so many bad examples today. And it's very sad. Today, we have African leaders who want only their way and no other way. We have African leaders who don't listen to the populace, to the masses. African leaders who've taken positions just to amass wealth and leave everybody else behind. Now, there are also very good examples today, and I'm excited to say that things are changing for the better in Africa. And so I would like for us to talk about what African leadership approach really is. Because some of the examples that is played in the media do not represent who we are. So I've been privileged to conduct research in African history as it relates to management and innovation. And I've been able to learn one or two things, and I'd like to share some of those things with us today. And hopefully you can actually bring your own experiences from your villages, from your townships, to enrich this discussion. So there are 3C's of the African leadership approach. The first C is cooperation. And we have discussed this at length last week. Africans are Africans because they cooperate. If you don't cooperate, if you don't have the spirit of cooperation, I am sorry to say, you are not exhibiting the true values of Africanism. Africans cooperate. The whole idea of Ubuntu is to be able to cooperate. If you think about the great things that has happened on the continent, they moved forward because Africans came together to build something together. And I will go as far as saying the reason why Africans all over the world are not doing well is because if you look at those communities where Africans are not doing well, it's because Africans are not cooperating as much as they should. Okay, I mean, that is not to say that there aren't external forces that are working against Africans. For example, for those of you who live in the US, you may have heard of the terrible news. You may have even seen the video of an African man who was murdered by a police on the streets. Okay. You have a police man put his knee on the neck of someone who's already handcuffed, of an African person who's already handcuffed. This person is crying for his life. I cannot breathe. I cannot breathe. Yet, the policeman did not listen. And there are plenty examples of this. So, of course, there are some external forces working against Africans. The narrative out there is negative, and it works against Africans. There is no doubt about that. Okay? The media tends to portray Africans in the negative light. There is no doubt about that. Okay, and that is why when you go for a job interview, or you submit an application for a job interview in the Western world, and you have an African name, they probably wouldn't call you back. In fact, one of my friends shared a story with me just last week about an African person that applied to a job in the UK. The same resume, but in one resume he used his English name, and in the other resume he used his African name, but everything else is the same. He submitted this. They didn't even look at the one with the African name. They just tossed it aside. But they called him because of the one with his English name. He showed up, and he basically told them what just happened. He sued them. I think he got some money. Maybe if you Google it, you might find that story. So my point is, there are cases substantiating the fact that forces are working against Africans. But I want to focus on what we can do for ourselves. Okay, I want to focus on what we can do for ourselves. And one of the things we can do is we can start cooperating. We can start working together. And go back to the recording from last week. I spent some time talking about some examples. If you're starting a business, some things you can focus on working together, how you could leverage one another's strengths to pool your resources together to start something great. So that's cooperation. So I won't spend time on that. The second C is compassion. Okay. I mean, if you know, it might sound very strange because some of us, we all live in some hard environments where people are almost merciless, very self-seeking in a sense. Example, if you go on the streets of Aba or Lagos, you see cars, people cutting in front of you. People are not patient. I mean, we see people being lynched, being killed on the street because they have done something wrong or because they've been alleged to have done something. So the idea of compassion sometimes seems to have eluded the African society. But it is truly, it's our value set. When I look into history, we see that Africans were very compassionate. The great Nelson Mandela shared a story when he was asked to explain Ubuntu. This is the way he explained it. He said, growing up, strangers coming from very far will be walking past his village, and his family would welcome the stranger. No questions asked. They welcome the stranger and they feed the stranger. They give him or they give her food. And if they need a place to sleep, they provide a bed for them to lie down. And then the next morning, they continue. This is truly who we are. This is what it means to be African. African leaders are compassionate, and it's taught at home. That was where Nelson Mandela learned to be compassionate, from home. That was how he was able to illustrate the idea of Ubuntu. Okay, so we have to look into ourselves and ask, how are we being compassionate? How are we living out this value of being compassionate to one another? Okay, it's time we stop letting people define us because we have forsaken our ways and we are pursuing other ways that is not ours. So Africans are compassionate. Let's think about that for a minute. Okay. Are there some things you can do today today to show somebody near you that this is what it means to be an African? Can you show them kindness? Can you show them some love? Because that is what it means to be African. You know, if you look at some of the Igbo terminologies, you find the idea of compassion reverberate throughout the language. And this is also true in other African languages. I'll give you an example. So in Igbo, do you know what family means? When we say family in Igbo, well, in the Western world, family is mother, father, children. In Igbo, family means outside and inside. Ezi n'ụlọ. Ezi n'ụlọ is the term for family. And those Igbos who are on the platform here can attest to that. Ezi n'ụlọ. Ezi means outside, or the compound, or the yard. Okay? So the village, the exterior, that's outside. Na is and olo is house. So family is outside and inside. That is to the core what it means to be African. Our family doesn't just start with our parents and our brothers and sisters. We are wired to think about the other person. That is why we make sure that when others are not doing well, we come together to help them. Okay? I happened to be born in Cotonou, in Benin. Okay, in Benin, in Benin Republic, when you greet someone, you say "Metuelelo." Metuelelo. Metuelelo is how are your people? How are your people? That's how you greet. You know, people. Again, it's this idea is always plural. You're always thinking beyond yourself. It's not how are you. It's not how are you doing. It's how are your people. Metuelelo. And that's because we are compassionate people. We always think about the other. So this platform is an effort to start bringing us back together, to remind us really of who we are. Okay, and very, very soon here, I'm going to take a break and let maybe some of you can tell us some words. Maybe you haven't thought about it, but think about some of the words. How do you greet? What is the word for family? If it aligns with what I'm saying, I'd like to hear it. I'd like for you to share it on the platform, because that is who we are. So that is that on compassion. The third C is co-prosperity. African leaders lead to help and uplift the other person, because African leaders, true African leaders, believe in co-prosperity. It's not just about me succeeding. It's not just about me being on the top and being called Oga or being called master. That's fine. But to the core, Africans really want the other person to succeed. That is who we are. But again, we might have forgotten those values. I'll go back to the Igbo culture. Again, I'm using the Igbo just as an example, because again, I'm going to invite you, if you are from other cultures in Africa, please want you to share based on your language and based on the knowledge that you've received from your own backgrounds to enrich our knowledge here in our conversation. So in Igbo language, or in the Igbo philosophy, we have biri kambiri, biri kambiri, live and let me live. It's an Igbo ideology. Live and let me live. Okay? biri kambiri. And we also have a proverb that says, Egbe bere ugo, ebere, nke si ibe yebela, nkutu jipuya. It means let the eagle perch and let the hawk perch. These are different kinds of birds. They have different aspirations, different ways of living, okay? Different backgrounds. So they say, let the eagle perch, let the hawk perch, but let the one say that insists that the other shouldn't perch, let its wing cut off, or may its wing break off. In other words, the idea is if you don't want your neighbor to succeed, okay, may you not succeed as well. That is the idea, and that is the African way. And I'm going to pause here. I've taken 15 minutes just to kind of lay a few things out. And I'd like to invite you all to share. Are there some comments? Are there some thoughts? And especially if you are from other cultures in Africa, please, by all means, bring that to enrich this conversation. The floor is open. Ben, go ahead.
Right. Thank you, Prof. I'm Ben, and probably among the few who are not from Nigeria, but thanks for the conversation. I think it rings a bell in my mind. I'm from Rwanda, those who don't know. And I do agree with you, like we share a lot of, common good as Africans. And as a person who has a background in veterinary sciences, veterinary medicine, when we are studying pathology, usually we start with the normal cell, the normal organ, before we go into the sick one. So you need to know something which is normal before you really understand what has gone wrong. So that was the approach we used back when we were doing the vet medicine. So talking about that, it kind of, I don't know what brought the disconnection, but back home in our culture, the kid, back the day, the kid was for the community. Like if a kid is doing wrong and an older person is passing by, he was allowed or she was allowed to stand and cane and punish this kid and say, hey, you're doing bad, you're not supposed to do this. But today it's like abomination. You can't talk to a kid and say, hey, why are you doing ABCD? It's like something that doesn't happen. So I do agree with you in a sense that we had that fellowship, that community and heart of being together. But today it's kind of getting disconnected and feels like normal, which is not normal. So I think there is a need of such platform to really educate people about what is normal, what is true. And that's the 3C you've well laid down. And this was the original African mentality, of which we need to teach people the science of the normal organ cell. So I transformed it into my background.
I like that.
So basically we need to, because I'm telling you, back home, the family, like you explained it, we call it umuryango in my local language, umuryango, meaning family. And it encompasses exactly what you mentioned, like both out. And that's why when someone's walking and is an older and see someone doing bad, he was obliged to stand and say, hey, stop that. That's not true. But today, it's a little bit different. So there is a need to bring back that spirit in Africans. And I would say it kind of need to start from the young generation, because the abnormality now looks as normal than the true normal, what you're talking about here, about the 3C's. So there is a need to really educate the young people and really show them what's normal so that they can identify easily what's abnormal. So thanks for this. Appreciate it.
That is wonderful. And this, and that is why at the university, we want our teachers to incorporate these value systems in their classroom. Okay, if there is any opportunity for them to impart this knowledge into the students, we want them to do that. And we are equipping our teachers to do just that. Yes.
Hey, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Well, thank you for this platform. And Dr. Osiri, I think you hit everything on the head. You hit the nail on the head. I think the one that resonated with me the most was compassion. And when I thought about compassion, I thought about selflessness. And I remember growing up as a kid, you know, grew up in a house of six kids. But you remember then some days we would just be home. One of our uncles would knock the door, say, "Hey, I just came to visit you," and he would stay for 5 years. And then another uncle would knock the door, "Hey, I just came to say hi." And then my dad said, "Oh, just come on. And they would just stay. And we never thought about, it wasn't something bad to us, because, you know, my dad would even say, "Oh yeah, give them this, give them that." We'll send things to family without even thinking about it. You know, selflessness is something that has been an African, it's ingrained in us as Africans. Now, there's something you mentioned, you talked about the external forces. I think one thing that has been an issue, especially when you come to the Western world, which I may be wrong, but this is one thing I found, is there's this fear among Africans, which is, I don't want people to think I'm close to person X because he's an African. So when they're in an environment where sometimes they need to speak up for someone, they say, "Oh, I don't want everybody to say I'm doing this or I'm saying this because this person is an African." And the reason I'm saying is, you know, I'm in an establishment where when I came in, there were probably only 2 Africans in that research center. But one thing I made as a point of duty is I said, you know what? When I look out there, I see people from China. They speak up for each other. They bring, like, one person comes in, boom, 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 then there's another person. You see people from India, boom, 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 there's another person coming in. They're helping each other. They're talking to each other. But Africans sometimes have this little fear of saying, "Oh, I don't want anyone to say I'm doing this because this person is African." Or I don't want people to think we Africans are kind of mingling too much. So they work behind the scenes, you know, hang out at each other's houses. But at work, they're like, "Yeah, let's be a little bit careful so people don't think we're doing this." So I think that if we can go back to that root, which is selflessness, that's who we are. It's in our core. Now, I'm not saying you give people things because they're Africans, but there are a lot of Africans that deserve a lot that we need to do just speak up for them. Just say, I like, nothing about their race or color, but just say, this guy deserves this. Why is he not being considered over this guy? You know, why is he not being hired? And once you speak up, you kind of create that platform for Africans to come in, you know, Africans, and then you can grow that African community in that establishment. So I completely agree with you, but the compassion really resonated with me.
Thank you very much, sir, for that contribution. Anybody else? Anybody else?
First of all, I want to thank you so much, Professor Osiri, for this opportunity, you know, given to us Africans, you know, to come together and, you know, work together. My contribution is one of the 3C's, which is the second one.
Compassion, I believe.
The third one, I'm sorry, co-prosperity. Yeah. So I come from a town or village called Nnewi in the eastern part of Nigeria. And my tribe is Igbo. Co-prosperity is a very important key value in my community. My tribe, my community, my village, we are known to do business. You know, auto parts business, you know, motorcycle business, you know, a lot. So we're known for that. And the Igbos in general are known for that. And we are known to be very industrious and smart people from my country. And this value grew more I believe after the Civil War, there was a civil war in my country where my tribe wanted independence, and but eventually that did not happen. And the then government at that time left my tribe to, suffer and perish without no help whatsoever. But you cannot believe it. Even at that situation, very hard situation, we kept working hard, helping each other. And in my country, when you count the billionaires, millionaires, educated people, we come first, regardless of what happened in the past. So let me give you a simple example. Where I come from, a lot of people were known, like I said, to do business. So what happens is, if I am the CEO of a company, I own a company, it doesn't matter if my distant relative is far away. I will go get him, put him in my company. He will be there. He will learn the trade for perhaps like 5 years, 4 years, as the case may be. And I will empower him with a capital base and with the knowledge that he has learned from me. He will grow from there, and he will pick someone else again from the family. We don't go outside to pick people. So what I'm trying to say is the co-prosperity is a key value when it comes to my people. And I hope that this platform will encourage all Africans to embrace this one of this co-prosperity C.
That's great.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. So just imagine now if a Yoruba man was to go and pick someone, or let me not say pick, welcome somebody who is Hausa or someone who is Zulu, right? And say, okay, let me train you, let me help you. So in other words, this is a beautiful, what you just explained in the Igbo culture is a beautiful culture, an institution that needs to be replicated. And it's already happening in some other cultures in different forms. But wouldn't it be nice if we have folks from other places welcoming people who are not in their culture and setting them up just like that? It's going to require trust, but I think we can get there. As we keep on having these conversations, we will get there.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Osiri, for this very nice platform. I'm very happy for all you're saying. And I think a while ago, we started talking about culture. And I remember we had a series of discussions when we were trying to talk about a new culture for Africans, because I think we discovered that culture actually determines a lot of things if we want to succeed, if we want to be successful. And I think these 3 C's that you're talking about is there's a part of that culture. And I think they also go hand in hand with mindset, because if we have a mindset of I should be compassionate, if I want to be successful, I also need to help my fellow African to be successful, because when 2 people are successful is better than when just 1 person is successful. You being successful and I being successful, we can lean on each other. We can, if I go down tomorrow, I can turn to you and you will help me back up. And if you go down tomorrow, you turn to me and I help you back up. Rather than if you are the only one successful and then tomorrow you fall, there will be nobody else to help you. We all stay down. So I think talking about you mentioned about putting this or including these values into the different courses. I think if we can look at a situation where people in every course they're taking, they try to look at a situation where how can they collaborate? How can you collaborate with some other person to create a project or create something? Have that mindset of collaboration. Okay, I'm going to collaborate with this person. I'm going to look for somebody to collaborate with. Even if it's a project that we can do on our own, that we can do individually, I think it still helps, or it can make it much better if we find somebody to collaborate with in whatever thing we're doing. So I'm very happy for this these concepts that you're bringing up. And I think if we begin to reshape our mindsets and start thinking differently from what we've been doing, and talking about the other brother who just spoke about the Igbo culture. In my country, we have a lot of Igbos, and we see how they collaborate with each other and how they're very prosperous. And I think it's a good thing. But as you also mentioned, that bringing in other people from different cultures will be very good, because
Absolutely.
it shouldn't result in a situation where we go into tribalism. You know, I'm bringing in this person because I'm an Igbo, that person is an Igbo. I only have to look for an Igbo person to help. I think as Africans, we begin to consider ourselves African, whether it's from East Africa or West Africa. You know, we try to look for that person that we can help in order to make the African continent as a whole to become more powerful. Because I think that one of the reasons why the world despises Africans is because Africans themselves are not collaborating very much with each other. And because of that lack of collaboration and integration, it makes us weak as people, it makes us weaker as a continent. Whereas if we could stand for each other, whether from the north or the south or the east or the west, you know, it will be, the world would tend to respect us much. They will tend to value us much.
Mm-hmm.
And
Very
in that
good.
way, you will have a better place in the world. So thank you for this opportunity.
Well said. Well said. And you know, it's important that we actually leave here and go practice this. Even if we start in our own families and our friendships, this idea of giving, of being selfless, let's begin to practice it, because it's going to take some time for it to be embedded back into our DNA. But we have to start somewhere. I'm reminded of something that my brother did. My brother, somebody from the US, I'm not going to say their name, gave me money to so that my brother can give them naira. They gave me US dollars, and they just wanted. It wasn't that much, and so my brother said, "Yeah, I can give them naira." So they agreed to a naira equivalence. Okay, so here's a naira equivalent of the dollar. Guess what happened? The dollar gained on the naira. So in other words, by the time he was about to pay this money out, he actually had more naira. He could have actually just pocketed that money, because they already had an agreement. You know, you give me $1, I agree to give you 380 naira. But the amount had gone up to about maybe 382. Guess what he did? He decided to add that extra. He split that extra that happened, that occurred with the person. And I thought it was a very simple gesture, but for me, it means so much. It means a lot. That is the attitude we have to start having. The attitude of being selfless.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, I want to speak on The second and third C, compassionate and co-prosperity. I come from Eastern Nigeria. I'm of the Igbo culture, of the Igbo origin. And there is this thing we are known for. We talked about family. We are compassionate. And when we talk about business in terms of trying to prosper, we believe that it should be a collective effort. So that's why there is a tradition, a trading tradition or a commercial tradition in my culture, which is called Eba Boy. That someone can go and learn trade in a well-established man's business. And after some years, he will be settled. He will be given some money, some fund, and will be raised his own business for him to start up his own. So this reminds me to what Chinua Achebe said, that the fact every man leave his different huts to come outside the Ilo, that is the compound, that is the Nama, to see the moon, does not mean that they cannot see it from their different huts, but
That's
because
right.
we believe in Igwe. We believe in Igwe. So it is together. I want to borrow Chinua Achebe's adage and apply it to every African descent. The last person that spoke, or the last two persons that spoke, he says something that we shouldn't be doing tribalism like he's from Igbo, so he should be from Igbo. I should get an Igbo brother to help me to fix something for me. So we should just take that adage as Africans. You grab the fact that Nigeria will leave his hut, the fact that Ghana will leave his hut, the fact that Sudan, the fact that South Africa and every other African country will come together in a central place to see the moon. The moon is this thing, this change we are trying to bring. Does not mean that we cannot do it in a different country, but when we come together and sneeze, the world will catch cold.
Thank you very much. When you spoke, I was jotting down, making some notes. And the few people who spoke after you also made contributions along the 3C's. It appears you are not hearing me, are you? Are you hearing me?
Yes,
oh,
speak
okay.
up. Speak up some more, please.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So it appears they made the comments along the 3C's, but as these comments were being made, I was getting a bit worried because what is actually happening and what we are discussing is a little bit apart. Because what I would really like to see is these 3C's being applied by our African leaders or by us in whatever position we are as leaders. We talk of cooperation, we talk of co-productivity, we talk of selflessness. They are all very good values. But where I have problem is the application. It's not as if we are not taught these values where we were at home, when we were growing up. We were taught these values, we know about them, but the application now turns out to be a different thing altogether. Like when one of the speakers talked about tribalism, immediately I just raised my hand because that was one of the points I raised, I put down here. We found out that in an attempt to carry out these 3C's, we end up practicing tribalism. We end up practicing nepotism. We end up practicing favoritism. In our university here in South Africa, yes, we are in South Africa, there are many Nigerians, but you see what we call the Yoruba Parapos that has just joined. Oh, from which culture? Oh, the person was brought by a social person. You hardly see an Igbo man brought by a Yoruba man, hardly, or a Yoruba man brought by an Igbo man. So I don't know. The application is where I'm more interested. As for knowledge, we know about this thing. We know about these 3C's, but how do we apply them? Even our leaders at home. You see that, my brother that spoke about the Abribas, you have a trade, or the Newis, you have a trade, you bring your brother. You just see the ripple effect like that. And a particular community or family, I'm in the position, my wife's sister is there, my cousin is there, my nephew is there. When will it get out to reach other people? I'm a bit worried. The application is what I'm worried about. How do we put this into practice?
That is well said. That is well said. So I'm hoping that we'll be getting some ideas from everyone on this platform on how we can be able to actually apply this. So for my humble submission is the reason why we set up this university is to begin to change the mindset.
Yeah.
You know, so think about what we are doing with this university. We are recruiting everybody from far and wide. So we have Africans all over the world, in America, in Europe, on the continent, it doesn't matter, as instructors, okay? So we're hoping that they can bring their value sets. They can bring whatever that they know, and they are teaching people who are not from their culture. So now we're beginning to have a real exchange. It's a global platform, a real trans-African or Pan-African platform. I think that is where it starts, because there is power in connection. Once you begin to relate to someone, you connect with someone, you get to know them, I think it goes a long way in you now trusting them, because I think it boils down to trust, because when there is no trust, you cannot do anything. You cannot perform any business transaction. But when you've met someone from Kenya, I've been to Kenya, I've been to Uganda, I've been to these places. I'm lucky to have been to these places. And I've met these brothers and sisters like, wow, I love to work with you guys. So for me, it's easy. I think African because I've met them. I know who they are. So I think that's one way that we are doing it. But then I also want to welcome other people to chime in. You see, I've also happened to live in the U.S. In the U.S., I went to a school called Grambling State University. It's a historical Black college. So if the African Americans here, they have a different culture than the European Americans here. It's a different culture. But I have been exposed to that. And I love that African American culture. And I can trust them. I know them. I work with them. You see, so it's going to take us getting out of our comfort zone to work with people. That's why I like the idea of collaboration. If we can have our students working together, collaborating in the classroom spaces, that will go a long way in creating this sort of spirit that we're trying to generate. I think somebody else raised their hand. Is brother Daviel. Daviel, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Go ahead, you have the floor.
Thank you for the platform, Brother Dr. Osiri. Also, I was just gonna basically say exactly what you just said. That's important for us to have diversity of opinion. And that's kind of one of the reasons why we should accept other cultures into our circles, just so that we are able to learn from them and then teach them as well. So I'm thankful that I have all these beautiful people here online that I can learn from you all. And I've already learned so much just from listening to you all speak. So thank you.
Just so you know, so brother Daviel and I, we are brothers. I call him brother because we joined the Alpha Phi Alpha organization, right? And I've gone to get to know him and the other brothers who are African Americans in that organization. You see, that is what we need to start doing. Let's start embracing each other, wherever we are. In Nebraska, I helped to start a group called the African Community. So we have Africans from all over the world, right? And when we say African, we also have African Americans in there. We have Caribbean Africans in there, because we believe that they all have something to offer and we can learn from each other. So thank you so much, Brother Daviel, for sharing that. I'm gonna call on Brother Juve, and then I'll go to Maze Prosper. Juve.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Osiri. I think I'm not saying anything new. I'm just piggybacking up on the points that have been made by others that have spoken before me. One of the points that I would just want to go back and highlight is trying to recognize just how the origins have implanted or self-propagate these divisions that we now see, right? What we celebrate a lot is our African diversity. We come from millions of villages, speak millions of languages, and have an incredible and a very well diverse sociocultural background. But I also think that that is partly what is tearing us apart, right? If just in Nigeria or in Cameroon, where I'm from, we have over 250 languages. So all I need to do to exclude the next person from a discussion is start speaking in the language that I speak. They start wondering what I'm talking about or why I'm not talking in English like we were talking before. And the thing I'm just bringing up here, which also piggybacks upon the application thing, is that recognition that our origins have already kind of demarcated us on so many levels. I happen to be here in the US, and the main language of communication is English, right? You go to the north, south, east, west, everybody speaks English, which automatically takes away a certain level of that kind of miscommunication or division that can arise just because we have been self-identified in smaller clusters. And then for us, once we recognize that, you know now that any step you have to make beyond that has to be a conscientious effort to say, hey, I'm from Igbo, the next person is from Benin, the next person is from Cameroon, Nigeria, South Africa, but we have a commonality, which is where we're coming from. And like John is mentioning here, and you show up to the US, I went to the same university as John, Grambling State University. And when we arrived there, fortunately for us, it was a historical Black college. But what I only realized after Grambling was, well, the first thing I realized in Grambling was just the bitterness about slavery, right? I didn't know the identification of being Black was brought to my attention there, right? But it took me years later to understand why that anger was. This was visceral because people that have been here have been dealing and seeing these things forever and a day. I was naive, and so it took some open-mindedness just to learn their point of view, because once you can start understanding, you can start empathizing with that point of view rather than just demonizing it and saying you're lazy or you're this or you're that, right? So I think to make a bigger point, the understanding of our roots and what the biases that engenders in us, it's important, because then once you can start appreciating your own bias, it can help you to transcend that bias.
Mazi Prosper, you have the floor.
Okay. Good afternoon or good evening, first of all, to everyone. And I want to say a very big thank you to our able prof, Professor Carlos Siri. I want to thank you for the privilege of giving to us. I want to appreciate everyone who has contributed to the idea of the Siri University. One of the things I appreciate the most is the ideology of the Siri University, which is one thing I want to pick up in everybody's explanation. I think the major thing we need to do, despite all our ideologies, is that we must have that mindset of helping our people, giving an orientation, helping Africans to understand our common goal. I tell people that I'm a true Nigerian, and they ask me how I deal with politicians here in this country, because I'm a comedian and I'm into entertainment. And I also teach. I tell people I'm a true Nigerian because I'm from the East. I grew up in the North, and I'm married from the West. My wife is from Yoruba, Ondo State. I'm from Abia State, and I grew up in Kaduna State. I speak both languages. Now, one thing that's helped me so much is that I have learned from these cultures. It's easier for me to relate with everybody from different cultures. I've also had the privilege of traveling to some of these African countries, and I have some of this concept about how to deal with my fellow Africans and give them hope. Then there's something that happened to me when I visited Professor Osiri in the US. We had some argument over some things. But the truth of the matter is that my few weeks of staying with Professor Osiri, he taught me things that he didn't know that has affected me positively today. He changed my mindset on how to think. He changed my mindset about education. I'm a graduate, but when I kept going with him and sitting with him, talking with him, something changed in my mind. And when I came back, that impactation have really helped me to impact other children. I don't put sentiment in things when I'm teaching. I don't differentiate who is east or north or south. I think the major thing we need to do as leaders and as instructors and members of this university, we should put sentiment aside. We should put a common goal in our mind. What is that common goal? How to unite Africa. How to bring Africa together. As we're teaching with proverbs, we bring proverbs that relate to all Africans, not just a particular country. A proverb that will help us grow as one. You know, when we think about what's happening in other African countries, where this one is hitting this one, it's because of the orientation they have about each other. But if we can change that mindset, apart from the education itself, let's be conscious of changing our mindset. It's going to help us to grow as a campus. I think that's my contribution.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I love the idea of not trying to differentiate in people and say, oh, you are from there, you're from there, and so I'm going to treat you differently. You know, I currently teach at the university here in Nebraska, and a couple of weeks ago, you know, we had graduation, and one of the students, a female European American students who graduated from the program that I direct, was being interviewed. So they were just trying to highlight this top student who finished from the university. And she just kept talking about me. She just kept talking about, hey, you know, Dr. Siri made a difference in my life, and you know, without him, I wouldn't have gone so far. I read the news article that was done on her, and I was brought to tears. I was literally brought to tears that she would remember to say in public that I had helped her. And that is the attitude I like to carry with me. I'm a proud African to the core. But part of being an African means you have to, when you are being compassionate, when you're being kind, that is who we are. You have to open it up. You have to share that with everybody else. It can be a fault sometimes, and we have been used because of that, but that's our strength. And I want to encourage us to think along those lines, not so that we can get the recognition, but just so we can truly live out our values and go to sleep at night happy that we've done what we are supposed to do. You know, so I'm really encouraged. And you know, I think what we should do is let's all be proud of our individual cultures. We shouldn't let it die. You know, I've been doing some research on the Igbo management systems, like what our brother Victor talked about. I did capture that in my research, and I published that. Okay, and a few weeks ago, I just learned about the Yoruba mathematical logic. I didn't know about this, that the Yorubas had developed some mathematical logic, and nobody's talking about this. So what we need to do as Africans is we need to look at every ethnic group and say, what has this ethnic group contributed to Africa and to the world? What is worthy of emulation from these people? And let's bring that. Okay, you bring math, you bring business, you bring leadership, so let's all bring those beautiful philosophies from different parts of Africa and start emulating those, and then start sharing it with the world. Let's speak our languages. Of course, we should speak our language and be proud of that. Of course, we should practice our individual cultures and be proud of them. But as Africans, we should start bringing those things together. We should appreciate each other. We really should. And I think if we do that, we will start building a stronger and a better Africa.
Yeah, I'm so sorry I came a little late. I was having difficulties to get on the computer. I'm not a technology smart. Yeah, so I struggle with that a lot. However, I'm grateful, whatever little that I have, you know, learned from you guys. I just want to say I'm very, very thankful that we have reached this far through you, Dr. Osiri. I just pray to God that He will continue to use you. I think among the many things that I learned as a child, as I was growing up in Africa, it was those object lessons from my grandmother. I observed my grandmother. She would literally serve a traditional drink called chibwantu in my language. It's made out of corn and some roots. She would serve that drink for visitors that we don't know.
Where are you from?
Zambia.
I just wanted you to say it.
Yeah, from Zambia. So I was like, Grandma, why are you serving this drink? She's serving it for a stranger. She doesn't even know whether one will pass by, but I saw them passing by anyways. So from that, I learned that every single human being matters. I don't have to look at people like, oh, Dr. Siri is from Nigeria. Brother Muhammad is from Sierra Leone. This person is from Malawi. No, I learned from my grandmother that a human being is a human being regardless of where they come from. And I'm so grateful that I had that opportunity to observe her do things. I can assure you, our cultures are very rich, very, very rich. But sometimes when we become so educated, there's nothing wrong with education. But the way we apply our knowledge, that's what matters. To me, education is a tool to use to uplift other people. But unfortunately, sometimes we use our education as a whip to whip others to show them that we are knowledgeable, we are smart. But if we are smart, we will be able to recognize that that man, that woman, standing by the roadside is a human being. We won't care about how did they get into that ditch. The first reaction will be, how do I fish them out of the ditch? Then once I have brought them out, then that's when we'll sit down and talk about how did we end up there? Then how can I help for us to never fall down into that ditch? That's what education to me means. I'm an international student here in the United States. I have so many limitations that limit me. But I have learned, even if I'm so limited, I can still make a difference within the little corner that I have. So the point that I'm trying to drive at, in each one of us is little corner. In whatever small spot that you are squeezed in, shine a little light to somebody else. I don't know how many homeless people have slept in this house. I didn't care which country they came from. I looked at them, these are African like me. And I got mocked. Why are you helping so-and-so who has a green card? Why are you helping so-and-so who has this and this? I tell people that at this moment, they need my help. Nothing is permanent. They will not always remain in that position. If God brings somebody for you to help, you ask yourself the first question, how special am I that they had to come to me to ask me for this? I'm not the only person in Lincoln. I'm not the only person who has this and that. But the fact that God sent them to your door, there is a reason why. Let us, each one of us, do the best we can wherever we are, whether it's at work, in the classroom, in the little corner, whatever position God has put you in there, you are there.